we're dropping a knowledge bomb that's going to cure your jet lag for the rest of your life.
If you don't already know, we're the Lockwoods, and along with our children, we've been traveling the world to experience up close and in person all the natural wonders and distinct cultures that our kids would otherwise be consuming only through textbooks and TV. Today's episode is the latest from our YouTube podcast playlist. If you're into podcasts, you can subscribe directly to that particular playlist. If you're already a subscriber of the channel, you should see these anyway.
Well, our kids aren't going to be in this episode because it's about jet lag, and they kind of go with the flow with what their bodies are telling them.
Or what we tell them.
Exactly. I was going to say, and we're the adults, we're the parents, and we kind of guide that for them anyways.
So what we've really done with this podcast playlist is taken a few of our past episodes where we're sitting still in front of a camera like this and said, all right, those are going to be podcast episodes. This is the first one that we've actually recorded with that in mind, so it is a bit of a different format. To that end, I'm actually going to refer to a little bit of an outline that I have here so we don't miss anything, because we want to get through this quickly. This format can be a little bit slower, so I want to keep that pacing up. You know what I mean?
I'm brand new at this. This is my very first podcast. I was a guest on maybe one or two.
We had a podcast together.
I guess I forget that was a podcast because it was video, just similar to this, I guess.
All right, so let's take a look. For anyone who travels across time zones, this is going to be an absolute game changer, all right? Because this morning I had the chance to sit down with a really cool guy via Zoom and talk about jet lag. This is Mickey Beyer-Clausen. He's from Denmark.
Clausen. Makes me think it's Santa Claus.
Yeah. And he's the co-founder and CEO of Timeshifter, which is really, I think, the first company who's almost cured this whole concept of jet lag. And we're talking about their relatively new and certainly groundbreaking mobile app available on both Android and iOS that really helps you on your trip so that you can manage this phenomenon.
And it was perfect that you met up with them and learned more about it, because it's one of the top questions we get as travelers is, how do you handle jet lag? How do you deal with jet lag? And we have got a ton of tips, and this is the one that's the game changer because it's science-based, because we can actually figure out the science behind jet lag, and then you can reverse it and cure it.
So we're going to show you that full conversation in just a minute, but first we want to get through a couple of things. And this is going to come up in just a minute, actually, but I used to not really believe in jet lag.
Yeah, he was crazy. He used to think it was more because you're so strong-willed, and he would think it's a state of mind. Like, if you don't believe in jet lag, then you won't experience jet lag, is kind of what you were thinking.
To an extent, this is true. Also, it was very glib, because at the time, I had never been off of this continent.
That's true.
If you don't already know this, even with all of the countries that we have been to, the continents, the cultures that we've experienced, all of these episodes on our channel, until a year and a half ago, I had never been off this continent.
Yeah.
I didn't really understand the concept of a long-haul flight or changing.
Right.
I had never even gone from the east coast of the U.S. to the west coast of the U.S. before, so I think at most, I shifted 2 hours. That's not even a thing.
Yeah. And your body can recoup a couple hours, right? It's like daylight savings time. But when you're talking about 15-hour time differences, there's chemicals and hormones that are going on in your body that are haywire because they don't know if it's night or day and how you should feel. So
I realize now that jet lag really is an objective, since talking to Mickey, it's an objective, measurable, scientific phenomenon. And yes, it is essentially overcomable through objective, measurable, scientific tactics. But until recently, almost nobody outside of NASA knew what those tactics were.
Right. And now we know. We're going to drop that knowledge bomb.
So before we show you that full conversation that we had, let's get through a couple of other quick notes. Number one, Timeshifter is not compensating us in any way, shape, or form for this coverage. They did give us free access to the app for the sake of being able to test it out. But we've had such a great experience with it already that we've put it into our new Stuff We Love collection on our website. Mm-hmm. Some of those items, by the way, do have commissions that get paid out to us if people buy things. A lot of them, like Timeshifter, do not. These are just things that we put into the collection because they're products, services, or experiences that kick ass and help us live a super awesome life.
And we love them. Yeah.
Brands cannot buy their way into this collection And we certainly don't rank or include anybody based on compensation. It's just our favorite things.
Yeah. Some of those things are just like our favorite sunblock. We're not sponsored by that brand, or even the bug repellent. It's things we genuinely, literally love and can't travel without.
You can check out that full collection, including Timeshifter, at followabc.com/stuffwelove. We'll also put direct links to their website and to their download links in the app stores in the description for this episode. Let's talk about that one situation that we had about my belief or disbelief in the jet lag concept real quick. Do you remember the Kranitz's dinner party where we ran into that guy?
No, I remember how crazy you were about not believing in jet lag.
I felt like that guy was crazy.
I don't remember that guy or the conversation.
All right, so we're at this dinner party, and Erin's like over at the bar area drinking with this guy, and she's like, "Hey, Phil, come on over here for a sec." And I walk up, and I had no idea that she was about to throw me into the lion's den. She's like, "Yeah, Phil doesn't believe in jet lag." And I thought they were just having a lighthearted conversation. I'm like, "Oh, I know, right? What a crock." And then he launches into this diatribe like, "Oh, this is a serious thing. I travel the world and Michael Jackson died because of this." And I'm like, whatever, dude.
Yeah, but yeah.
No, literally, this was his argument.
Wow.
And I remember thinking, I was in the military, okay? And I happened to be assigned to a special operations unit. And I was not a Navy SEAL or special operator or anything like that. I was actually a crew chief on MC-130s, and one of the things that our planes did was infiltration, exfiltration of special operators into classified missions and locations, right? And that would mean that sometimes these operators were being flown halfway around the globe, and they would have to perform some of the most physically and mentally demanding operations you can think of. This guy's complaining because he has to get someplace to do a speaking engagement. But we're talking about life and death for these operators. And they had tactics, which I'm not going to get into detail on here, to help them manage jet lag. So it wasn't so much that I didn't think it was a thing, it's just that I thought it's totally manageable.
Yeah, okay.
And maybe I was wrong, but now I'm not. Like, I might have a conversation with that guy again and show him this and be like, see, jet lag doesn't have to be it.
Well, and I think that we're the perfect case study for this, because if you're not familiar with our channel, we're semi-nomadic. So we're not like most travel families that, set off and they start in one destination and they keep moving around the globe. We are literally flying halfway around the world, flying home, flying back halfway, flying home. So I feel like if anybody needs to conquer jet lag, it's us.
Enough from hearing it from these mouths. Let's get straight over to the source, Mickey Beyer-Clausen.
To take a step back, jet lag is really caused by this circadian clock we have in our brain. It's disrupted when we cross time zones. And this clock in our brain is very important because it's the conductor of the orchestra of all the clocks we have in our biology that are regulating all of our systems and functions. So metabolism, immune function, liver, heart, skin, bones, muscle, everything is controlled by these clocks. And when all of these clocks are disrupted, we're getting not just a few symptoms, we're getting a lot of symptoms. Some of them we don't know about. Surely we get fatigued at the wrong time, and we sleep worse. We wake up in the middle of the night, and it's difficult getting up in the morning, maybe, and other more obvious consequences, but it really goes far deeper. We get more sick because our immune function is not responding well when we're awake in the new time zone. We get upset stomach because our metabolism is not working in sync with the new time zone. And there are just numerous examples of various consequences that we might not even think about or think is connected to jet lag. So just powering through is not the way. It's just not the way. And trying to solve it with a generic advice that often is provided in blog posts and in newspapers, and stay hydrated, eat at the same time as the locals, fast for 16 hours, sleep as much as you can on the plane, set your clock to the new time zone and start acting like you're it, even ahead of time. Listen, all of that is not going to help. And it's certainly not going to change the circadian clock in your brain to adjust to the new time zone more quickly. And that's where, that's where Timeshifter comes into the picture. Not only are we applying the latest circadian science that really can help you tackle the underlying cause of jet lag, but we're also supporting, such advice in a way where we're also dealing with symptoms. So we're doing two things at the same time: dealing with the underlying problem as quickly as possible, and then supporting by addressing symptoms as well. And the way to do that is by timing light correctly. And this is the big misconception. Jet lag has nothing to do with food timing or exercise timing or sleep as much as you can on the plane or this and that. It is all about timing light correctly, because that is what the clock in our brain, the conductor of the orchestra, all the clocks in our bodies, that is the key time cue for that clock. So if you see light at the right time, you're going to shift that clock so fast to new time zone that you're going to be absolutely blown away. If you avoid light at the right time, you're going to as well see that same very quick adaptation. However, if you don't see and avoid light at the right time, you're going to shift the clock the wrong way, away from your new time zone. And you're going to make jet lag worse than it was when you started out. And this is a fun thought, right? So you go into the plane, you might have a 6-hour time zone difference, and now you're doing the wrong thing with light, and now you're expanding it to more than 6. It could be 7, 8 hours difference instead of just what you started out with. And that's really, I think most people are not aware of that. And that's, that's a fun fact, I think, and an important one. Now, when it comes to light, one more thing to say about that is, when you take sleep does not impact your circadian clock in the brain. But the fact that you're closing your eyes states light from coming into the circadian clock, and that impacts your circadian clock. Now, why is that important? It's important because if you sleep at a time when you should be seeing light, you're making jet lag worse. So you get 8 hours of sleep on the plane and you're celebrating, I'm not going to have jet lag this time, I slept great. But you slept at a time when you should have seen light, and now you have 8 or 9 time zones different. So really it all comes down to light and timing it based on you and not somebody else. Everyone are different. Everyone has different speeds of circadian clocks. Everyone have different sleep patterns and things that we take into account. So it has to be personalized to you. And it's not intuitive by in any way. It's not like just something I can jot down on 5 bullets and say, this is the way you do it. You have to kind of build a personalized plan to do it well.
Yeah, it's clear that it's such a complex algorithm you guys have behind there. I mentioned before that having used the app on one of our trips to the other side of the world, a lot of the recommendations were very counterintuitive. And I thought, all right, well, this is either going to not work out well, or this is going to explain why nothing else does work, because it is counterintuitive. It does go against logic in some instances. So you've got to put trust in the app. But when you do, clearly there's a big difference. There has been for us.
You have to. And Phil, we get on, customer support, we get numerous questions from users saying, can this be true? Is this advice you've given me, is that real, or is something wrong? And all we say back is trust advice. It seems like the user interface, as you've seen, is quite simple. It's intuitive. You understand very quickly what to do, but behind it, it's very complicated, and it's not intuitive as you would think it would be. There are travelers that have traveled for 20, 30 years that are like, well, I go to bed a little bit late or a little bit earlier before the flight, depending on what, and that's not wrong, but the light exposure timing and light avoidance timing, then it becomes really not intuitive. And that is the key for shifting quickly. So, so trust the advice, just do what it says, and try it out once, especially on a trip where you've had jet lag before, you can see the difference.
You mentioned the user interface, which I think is, like you said, it's simple, it's misleadingly simple. And that's just a testament to the great user experience design, user interface design from, I believe, one of your co-founders, right?
Yes, correct. Around, my co-founder is just a genius in that department, and has done a really good job. I agree. Thank you.
It's fantastic. And one of the areas of complexity, which you alluded to, is that it's not a one size fits all. So far, I'm the only one in our family who's actually been using the app when we travel, but it sounds like if I have my wife, Erin, do it with hers, she's going to have a different chronotype, so she may get different recommendations than what I get based on that information, right?
That's correct. So, each Timeshifter plan is based on some questions that we asked you in order to personalize the advice as much as we can and make it effective for each traveler. And in addition to your normal sleep pattern, which is normally determined on, not necessarily how you'd like to, when you'd like to go to bed and wake up in the morning, but maybe more on social factors like your kids have to go to school in the morning, whatever. So we really need to understand what your normal sleep pattern is, but more importantly, we need to understand your chronotype. What's the chronotype? It's the speed of your circadian clock in the brain. So some of us have faster clocks, some of us have slower clocks, which is what we refer to as morning types or evening types. If it's precisely 24 hours, it's you're neither. You feel great in the morning, you feel great at night. There's no particular advantage in the morning or evening. Now, our clock speeds can vary from 23.5 to 25 hours. And that difference can translate up to 7 hours difference in our biological time during the day. So if you and I went to bed the exact same time, we lived in the same time zone, we didn't travel, we're not shift workers, we just went to bed the same time every night and woke up the same time every morning for a month, there could be up to 7 hours difference in our biological time. Just
over the course of
the difference in speed of the circadian clock, our chronotype. And of course, the 7 hours difference can then be much bigger if you have insomnia, or if you have traveled, or if you're a shift worker, then the time is completely can be much more different in each of us. But understanding what time it is in your body is the starting point for any Timeshifter plan. Without knowing what time it is in your body, we couldn't help you effectively. So that's the starting point. Once we know what time it is in your biology, which is something we estimate, then we add itinerary information, right? We're now looking at your itinerary, your flights, the dates, departure time, arrival time. Is it east? Is it west? How many time zones? And all of that factor into how we design a plan. Do you have any stopovers? That factors into the plan. What time of day are you leaving? Factors into the plan. So if you go to a destination and you leave in the morning versus the afternoon or evening, the plan is completely different. And so it's highly personalized to an extent where we could probably put together each plan 500 different ways based on your trip, depending on those factors. So it truly is highly personalized, and you can't just use somebody else's plan unless everything is the same. And it rarely is.
I have heard in the past, so kind of a two-part question here. I've heard that for every 1 hour of time zone change you go through when traveling, it takes you about a day to adjust. So number one, is that accurate at all? And then number two, what would be a realistic expectation along those lines for anybody who really follows the Timeshifter app to the T?
Yep. So yes, you're absolutely right. The rule of thumb is it takes about a day per time zone to fully get over jet lag. Of course, at the end of it, you might feel okay, but it's still there for maybe a couple of more days. That's absolutely true. But of course, you can mess it up, or do something by coincidence that shortens it. So again, like I said, if you end up sleeping at a time when you should be seeing light, you might not be as lucky as 1 time zone per day. It might be extended to be less than that. And so it's a rule of thumb, and it's absolutely correct. That's what we expect. In terms of you naturally adapting to a new time zone. If you were to use Timeshifter and follow the advice, not necessarily fully, but to a large extent. So you don't need to follow the Timeshifter advice 100% for it to work well. We can see in more than 100,000 post-travel surveys from our users that the ones that follow it 80% or more are getting tremendous benefit, tremendous. And so, fortunately for all of us, we can make mistakes, and we have the option to opt out from certain advice if something is important. I can give you a couple of examples in a moment. But if you follow the advice, at least 80%, but preferably more, you can expect to shift between 3 and 4 times as fast as normal. So it's not a 10-20%. It's something you really feel. It's not it's not an incremental improvement. It's material. It's really feeling completely different when you arrive. And we've had some fun, really fun examples where you could see people that follow the advice and people that don't follow the advice. At every Global Wellness Summit, which happens once a year around the world, all the delegates are receiving a Timeshifter jet lag plan. And a few years ago, just before COVID, they had an event in Singapore. And most of the delegates come from US. And that was the first time Timeshifter was offered to the delegates. So people were very excited about it. And I don't know how many followed it. We didn't really count, but let's say about 1/3. It was clear that lots of people used it when they flew in. You could see that people that used it were right from day one participating at evening events or just feeling great versus the people that didn't follow it. It was the bus the whole week, and it's been ever since, where you really can see a stark contrast between people that are just trying on their own and people actually following the science. It's really funny.
That's fantastic. What a great story. And speaking of, so that's kind of getting into geopolitics and such, but some of your big audience groups, professional athletes, I mean, I follow Formula One. I know it's huge for them, constantly going back and forth. You've got CEOs are a big part of your audience. I would assume world leaders. And you also have kind of the NASA program in your DNA. Beyond that, we're now talking about the addition of your Shift Worker app. Can you tell us a little bit about how all of these kind of fit together in terms of priority and focus for the app and the roadmap?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Timeshifter is not just a jet lag app. It is a platform, a technology platform for controlling circadian rhythms. And that means we can address multiple big problems like jet lag, like, when you're a shift worker, there are many negative effects of shift work, sleep disruption and, safety concerns around being alert at the right time when you're working. When you're home, the quality of life is an issue for many shift workers, et cetera, et cetera. So that's another area where we have a new app that's out. That helps them shift quickly or adjust or manage the changing work schedules. So there's a connection there to jet lag in that it's all about being in sync with your day and night, whatever that means. But there are many other areas like like you mentioned, we help elite athletes with peak performance. Controlling your circadian rhythms will help you be at your best at certain times. We know how to do that with or without jet lag, which is quite interesting. So if you have an athlete, like if you take Formula One, for example, they're traveling and racing in all, cities around the world, and very often. And so we have to look at both jet lag for them, but we also have to look at when they're racing, when it's qualifying race, when it's the actual race. And that means that sometimes we're not adjusting them fully to the time zone lane, because the time of the race is such that it would be better for them to be in a different time zone, and then their biology would be ready to perform at the time when they're actually racing. And so the mix of peak performance and jet lag becomes very exciting and very complicated. And then, of course, on top of that, there are so many restrictions for them, right? That's the same with soccer teams. We're helping soccer teams, we're helping others. Sometimes they're offered by FIFA, UEFA, they're offered a time to train. Here's your field, go and train at this time. And it might be a really bad time for the player's biology. It might not be a great time for train, but that's the time they've been offered. They can't change it. So with athletes, we're very often working around a massive amount of constraints. And then we have to look at what do we do? The same is true for astronauts. When you have astronauts going up on to the International Space Station, the time of day they're launching depends on, how they can hit ISS. So it could be at 7 o'clock in the morning, at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, or 11 o'clock at night. And then the astronauts then need to get up 8 hours before for medical checks, for food, for talking to family, suiting up. There are all these different things they need to do. So 7 o'clock in the morning launch means they wake up at 11 o'clock at night. And so that's issue number one. But even before that, and the days before, with all the meetings, with the training, with the traveling from somewhere else to the launch pad, it's complicated. And of course, any space program are looking at safety as priority number one. So controlling circadian rhythm is massively important in those situations. So Timeshifter is really working across the board of anything that connects with circadian rhythms, and jet lag is fun because there are a lot of us that enjoy traveling and are traveling for business, and just arriving and feeling great day one is great and fantastic. But then you have the other more extreme spectrum where you have astronauts that they have to be at their best at certain times for safety reasons. That's just a sort of a different type of challenge, I guess.
Yeah, interesting. And I'm curious, for people like us who are constantly traveling back and forth, does the circadian clock ever become more fluid and, just kind of adapt to that, make jet lag easier over time, or is that just not a thing?
No, it's not a thing, unfortunately. We humans have been designed to live the way we lived hundreds of years ago, where we rose with the sun and we went to bed a few hours after the sun set. And consistency was there every day, 7 days a week back then. And now it isn't, right? We have artificial light that allows us to stay up longer and do Zoom calls at 2 a.m. And we have jet travel that allows us to cross time zones quickly. We've shift work where people work in the middle of the night. It's not normal. It's not natural. It's not something we designed to be able to do. And it'll take a very, very long time, many generations from now, where we might see some sort of, I'm not even going to say that, that the scientists need to confirm this, but it would take a really long time potentially before our bodies would be able to cope with things in a better way. So that's not, and it's not the future for us. So no, we are forced to deal with. We're forced to deal with it, and we can deal with it in two ways. We can either ignore it and have issues when we travel, or we can deal with it and use the science that are there and clearly describes how we can tackle the underlying problems, so we can really hit the ground running, enjoy our vacations more. If you go on a week vacation, you know that very well. When you go on your trips, if the first couple of days are destroyed by jet lag, you've lost valuable time. You want to enjoy day one. You want to have dinner on the beach the first night instead of being in the room feeling terrible and having problems waking up in the morning. Might compromise some sightseeing or stuff you would do day two. So you just want to hit the ground running. If you're a business traveler, the same is true, but for a different reason. You don't want to, don't want to have issues with concentration. You don't want to have issues being awake at your business meeting. And clearly, when you go for business, you're not arriving 4 days or 5 days in advance of the meeting. You're arriving the day or two before. And so, as far as I'm concerned, this is not a silver bullet. It's not a pill you take and then it's dealt with. There is some work on the traveler side. You need to follow the advice to some extent to benefit. Is it worth it? Absolutely.
Well, Mickey, I really appreciate all this additional insight. The last time that I tried it was particularly challenging. I think we had gone from Southeast Asia for a couple of weeks, back to Denver for 2 days for me, and then I was out to Hawaii for a long weekend, back to Denver for 2 days, and then India for a couple of weeks. I mean, it was just all over the place. We've been here in Denver for a couple of weeks now, nice and adapted, and we're flying to Japan this weekend for about 10 days. So I'm really looking forward to this nice, clean trip and just seeing how much we can minimize it using the app. Got Aaron hooked up on it as well. So even the case,
that's great.
We're gonna follow it to a T, and it's gonna be really interesting to see what we experience this time around.
That's great, Phil. And just a few pieces of advice for your future time shifts here. One of them is if the app tells you to sleep, for example, on the plane, and you can't sleep as much as the app is recommending, then at the very least keep in darkness when you're not sleeping, because we are expecting your eyes to be closed and dark to be sent, the dark signal to be sent to the circadian clock. So that means either keep your sleep mask on, but if you're not willing to do that and you want to be able to look around, at least put on some dark sunglasses, as dark as possible. Not any sunglasses will be sufficient. It really needs to be dark. That's tip number one. Then you're at least following the light part of the device in the plane, which is absolute the foundation. The second part is when we tell you to see light, prioritize light, and you're in a dark plane, just crank up the brightness of the in-flight entertainment system or on your computer, watch a movie or do some work. That's enough. Get as much artificial light as you can. That's the way to go. If you need to avoid light and you must be outside in the sun, there could be a situation where the app tells you avoid light in the morning, for example, for a couple of hours, and you want to go outside and you have a breakfast meeting or with your family. You just don't want to be inside in darkness. Put on your dark sunglasses. It's the light advice that really makes every plan work.
Yeah.
So try to do that, and you're going to benefit tremendously.
Very interesting. Okay, good tip. We'll definitely make sure we do that.
Cool.
All right. Thanks again, Mickey. I appreciate it.
That's crazy, because he really breaks it down to sound like a simple thing.
It basically is. And what he says is it all comes down to light. I would say it all comes down to light and dark, but really those are Boolean, so you can eliminate them. It comes down to light and management of light. It's just crazy.
You know what this reminds me of? What is it called when you have a newborn? Sleep confusion. where newborns are sleeping all day and they're awake all night because in the womb they didn't really have that exposure to light, and so they don't know where to land.
They're like little
sleep-wise.
astronauts
Yeah.
in a little capsule.
Yeah.
They're little International
Yeah.
Space Station.
Right.
Crazy.
Anyway.
Well, we've already populated our trip to Japan that we start on Sunday in like 2 days. We're going to put some of this advice into the episodes that come up there. So if you want to see that stuff in action, the recommendations from the app, definitely hit the subscribe button here and you can see some of those in that content.
And if you want to see it in real time, then follow us on Instagram or Facebook because we're constantly posting daily to those platforms.
Maybe TikTok. Okay, but here's the thing. Mickey has generously donated 10 gift cards for us to give away to our viewers for 1 year of free access to the app. So if you'd like to enter for that, just like with all of our giveaways, go to followabc.com/join, opt into our email because that's how we notify winners by email. And we're going to pick 5 random people from Japan live on the socials. And they'll have 1 week to respond before we start working our way down the alternate lists.
To be clear, we'll be in Japan, but the contestants can be from around the world.
I'm sorry if that was unclear.
It probably wasn't.
Void where prohibited, blah, blah, blah.
That's it for today. Our very first podcast check done. We're going to see you in Japan. Arigato for watching.
We are the Lockwoods. Aaron, Phil, Reagan, Brooklyn, and Cole. We're traveling the world to experience, up close and in person, all the natural wonders and distinct cultures that our kids would otherwise be consuming only through textbooks and TV. We think it's a better way to learn, and we're working hard to fund this little experiment in the hope that our kids will grow up wiser, kinder, and more grateful for the beauty of our diverse planet and its people.